We're speaking to political analyst and chairman at the Council for Responsible Political Behavior, Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath. A pleasant good evening, sir.
Good evening to you and your viewers, listeners.
It's wonderful to have you on. We're almost at the end of this campaign, and I know it has not been easy for you and the council. How challenging has it been? Because I mean, so much things were laid out as far as to promote and enforce respect, tolerance, harmony, and peace, and of course, prohibited conduct such as certain language and how things are expressed. But has it been somewhat brutal to the point that things did go a bit out of control?
No, as a matter of fact, it was not that brutal, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, our concern here is not as how bad it could be, is basically how we could improve our campaigning strategies to make it more developmental and focused on issues that are becoming important to the society. So we don't see it as negative in that light. In fact, all that happened in this campaign was very much so positive. I mean, yes, there was some criticism, even of the council and of myself. And we take that as, I mean, things that have to happen. But it was growing pains, and it was growing pains for the country as we move into building our democracy.
Then let me ask you, do you believe then that we could be moving forward as far as having that social maturity that we can subscribe to these things that are laid out? I mean, Dr. Rowley, of course, you had many press releases on some of the language that was used and expression, but even if trying to contain, do you believe that there's a thin line where as politicians we say, listen, Doctor, you are not in the middle of a campaign. You are not fighting for your political life. So all gloves are off, and I don't really have to abide by the things that are laid out by the council.
And yes, that is so. And that is something that I mean, basically is what some of the responses have been. You don't have to listen to us. Our concern, however, was not listening to us, but rather how would you be portrayed in the national eyesight and perspective. And in fact, this is why, in fact, today I was actually telling somebody, I was very happy that Dr. Rowley was so critical of the council. And they said, but I mean, how could you say that? And I said, well, for one thing, what has transpired out of that criticism came a greater understanding of what is the role and function of the code, what is the role and function of the council, who are the members of the council, and all of those things. So that was important. More importantly, however, and I think because of the complaint that Dr. Rowley had made about the council being biased and unethical and all those sorts of things, some media house actually went to him and said, well, or not to him, but rather to the PNM, and said, well, if you already believe that the council is so biased and unethical, would you all continue to stay with the code and the council? And of course, the PNM, the response was, yes, we will stay with them. Why? Because in the eyes of the population, had the PNM withdrawn, it would have sent a totally different message that no political party wants to send to the society. So clearly, that is, from my perspective, a plus for us. As we go forward, we know there are teething issues that we have to deal with. We know all of these things. In fact, I would go so far to say that in 2015, when the code was launched and the council was first set up, we were told, don't expect any significant change for the next 15 years. Yes, incrementally we will begin change. But with that incremental change, it would not be anything substantial or significant. And we have seen it that, yes, people are now doing it. In fact, the council takes, holds in high regard the fact that the three daily newspapers wrote editorials which supported the work of the council. And that, I think, tells us that at least the message is getting out there. Regardless of the complaints, we're going to forward.
We know that your hands, as far as the council, there's a limitation as to how much you can perform in that capacity. But as far as getting into the substance of the campaign, how does one manage the expressive nature of many of the topics? Because Dr. Rowley on Saturday in La Jolla said that the proposed stand your ground legislation could lead to division within the country. And he along the lines of ethnic and those who would have guns and what have you, how much can you dive into the substance to say, listen, this is a topic, but however, the way that it's being managed, this in itself is causing some division?
That is outside the remit of the council at this point in time. The code gives parties and politicians and candidates the right to speak about policies that they would want, the right to defend those policies. Now, defending those policies is one thing. The language you use in defending the policy is another thing. So, for instance, when we cited Kamala last week when she made this comment about NTA clip and those sorts of things, we said that she had every right to defend her policy. However, the language that she was using was language which could have been interpreted today. We are now introducing and promoting violence. That is not acceptable. So, again, in fact, I will tell you, I'll go so far to say we have not published it. You're the first with doing this too. We actually had a complaint where somebody wrote to us and told us, well, how could you have an international criminal or fugitive or whatever on a platform? Now, the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago does not prevent anybody from standing on a platform and speaking. We cannot do that. We cannot debar anybody. We cannot tell anybody they can't speak. In fact, I tell people, I said, do you know that our electoral laws tell you that even if you are imprisoned and your sentence is less than 12 months, you could be nominated as a candidate and run for an election even though you are still in the prison. I said, that's our laws. So we cannot prevent anybody. In like manner, we cannot prevent anybody from speaking about their policy. What we will talk about, however, is the language they will use in whether that language is inciting hatred, inciting violence, those sorts of things.
Yeah, and it brings me to this point. Compared to places like Jamaica in the past, where it was riddled with violence and what have you, when elections took place. In this country, we still have, of course, democratic process where the transition of power takes place without any military intervention and what have you. Do you believe that the council is the last standing entity that is buffering, that we simply do not get to that point where it goes completely out of control?
No, I don't think the council is the last buffer. The council is there to simply guide and help. I would continue to say that Trinidad and Tobago is a young democracy, but being a young democracy that we are steeped in our democratic tradition. And I go back to 1990 and the attempted coup that we had in Trinidad. 99.9% of our population refused to go to support an overthrow of an democratically elected government. Notwithstanding that, 2 days before that, 50% of the population was marching on the street, calling for change, calling for the removal of the government and so forth. And when the an attempt was made to overthrow the government, what did the majority of the population do? They stayed in their homes and they respected our democracy. So we have that tradition of our democratic tradition. We've never had, we've had changes in government once a government has lost the election.
Yeah.
In fact, in the instance when we actually had an 18-18 tie and the president ruled to give power to another party other than the one that was in the incumbent, people accepted it without rancor and yet they would quarrel and right, but there was no attempt to destabilize the country. And that we believe, but what we, and this is where you see, this is one of the intentions of the code. It's not necessary to restrain our politics and politicians, you know. It's rather simply to lift the standard of our campaigning.
All right.
Lift the standard of our campaigning so that we don't go down into a cut-off mud, swing in and take that.
Well, I must say you've had quite a dry run, so we look forward to see what you and the council are going to implement for the general elections that is started to take place next. So we look forward to that. I want to thank you so much for taking time out this evening. Best of luck to you and your entire council and your entire team. And we will be, of course, checking in with you periodically. And again, let's see what happens for the general election.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much.